Hello, today we are going to see the various evaluation techniques, the remaining part from Unit 5. This has been taken from chapter number 9 of Allen-Dix. The following are the topics which we expect to cover in this particular video lecture. The first one talks about goals of evaluation, then evaluation criteria, evaluation through expert analysis, evaluation through user participation, and choosing an appropriate evaluation method. So, let's say what is evaluation. Evaluation is not a single phase in the design process. It needs to occur throughout the design life cycle, with the results of evaluation feeding back into modification to the design. There is a close link between evaluation and the principles and prototyping techniques which help to ensure that the design is assessed continuously. So we see that there is supposed to be a link between the test usability and the functionality of a system. It is much easier to change a design in the early stage of development than in the later stages. We can make a broad distinction between evaluation by the designer of usability expert with direct involvement by the user and evaluation that studies actual use of the system. The evaluation by the designer is particularly useful for assessing the early designs and prototypes, and usability expert normally requires a working prototype or implementation. However, this is a broad distinction, and in practice, the user may be involved in assessing early design ideas, for example, through focus groups. An expert-based analysis can be performed on completed systems as a cheap and quick usability measurement. There are two broad categories of evaluation techniques. The first one says the expert analysis and the other one is user participation. Now let's see what are the different goals of evaluation. So evaluation mainly has three goals. The first one is assess extent of system functionality. The next one is assess effect of interface on user. And the last one says identify specific problems. Now, let's start from the very first one. Assess extent of system functionality. This is mainly concerned with the design of the system should enable the users to perform their intended tasks more easily. This means that the system functionality is important as the design of the system should enable the users to perform the task which they are expecting to do. This includes making the appropriate functionality available within the system and reachable by the user. It also involves matching the use of the system to the user's expectations of the task. For example, consider a filing clerk who is performing the task of using and is used to retrieve a customer's file by the postal address. The same capability, or at least a similar capability, is expected from a computerized file system. Let's see the next one. So over here we say that it considers the functionalities which are involved in the form of functional capabilities, learnability, its usability, user satisfaction, enjoyment of the user, and emotional response. In case of systems where we are involved or the system is involved or is aimed at leisure or providing entertainment to the user. Here, evaluating the system design in terms of functional capabilities is a major concern, and it is important to assess the user's expectation of interaction and its impact on the user. The next one says identify specific problems. This is the final goal of evaluation, to identify specific problems within the design. So here we consider aspects of design which, when used in their intended context, caused unexpected results or create some confusion among the user. This is specifically concerned with the identifying the trouble spots which can then be rectified further. A fuller classification of principles that can be used as an evaluation criteria are all the principles that support usability. We've already learned the various principles which are concerned with usability. For example, learnability, robustness, and so on. Flexibility is also one of them. Now let's see what is the next one, which talks about the evaluation of any system design through expert analysis. So we say that evaluation should occur throughout the design process. The first evaluation of a system should ideally be performed before starting implementation work. That is, it should be done at the very first time of designing to avoid a lot of expensive mistakes. It can be very expensive to carry out user testing at regular intervals during the design process, and it can be difficult to get an accurate assessment of the experience of interaction from incomplete design and prototypes. So we say that evaluation of a system is to be performed at the very starting, and it should be carried out before the actual implementation is going to start. So there are four approaches which are supposed to be majorly concerned to expert analysis. The first one is cognitive walkthrough, heuristic evaluation, the use of models, and use of previous work. Now let's see one of them one by one in detail. So the cognitive walkthrough was basically proposed by Paulson and others. It involves by evaluating the design on how well it supports the user in learning a task. It is usually performed by experts in cognitive psychology. So we know that considering a user-centered design, cognitive psychology plays a major role. Expert walkthroughs designed to identify potential problems using psychological principles. In this case of cognitive walkthrough, the sequence of actions are supposed to be performed which refer to the steps similar to the code walkthrough in case of system engineering, or I would say software engineering, in which in this case we say that the steps refer to an interface which will require a user to perform some task in order to accomplish something which someone is known about. The evaluators then step through that action sequence to check the usability problems. The main focus of cognitive walkthrough is to find out how easy a system is to learn or learning through exploration. To do a cognitive walkthrough, you need to know the following majorly four things: a very detailed specification or prototype of the system, like location and wording for a menu, a description of the representative tasks, a complete written list of actions needed to complete the task with the proposed system, and an indication of who the users are and what kind of experience and knowledge the evaluators can assume about them. The cognitive walkthrough, we would say that, considers what will be the impact with and will interaction have on the user, what cognitive processes are required, and what learning problems may occur. Here, basically, the analysis focuses on goals and knowledge. Does the design lead the user to generate the correct goals? Consider an example of programming a video recorder by a remote control. The next one talks about the heuristics evaluation. So, there were some heuristics which were proposed by Nielsen. Now here, our main focus is that it is nothing but a heuristic is nothing but a guideline or a general principle or a rule of thumb that can guide a design decision or used to critique a decision that has already been made. Heuristic evaluation can be performed on a design specification, so it is useful for evaluating early design. It can also be used on prototypes, storyboards, and fully functioning systems, and is therefore a flexible and relatively cheap approach. The general idea behind heuristic evaluation is that several evaluators independently critique a system to come up with potential usability problems. There are some examples of heuristics which are mentioned over here. System behavior is predictable. System behavior is consistent. The feedback is provided. Now, these are the various 10 heuristics which are mentioned by Nelson. He talks basically about the various heuristics like visibility of the system, match between system and the real world, user control and freedom, consistency and standards, error prevention, recognition rather than recall, flexibility and efficiency of use, aesthetics and minimalistic design, help user recognize, diagnose and recover from errors, help and documentation. We are supposed to learn all of them in depth. This is just a list of the 10 heuristics. Now the next model talks about model-based evaluation. Now here consider that there are different types of models which are possible. So some models can be cognitive and design models which provide a means of combining the design specification and evaluation in the same framework. The example of model-based evaluation, we can consider GOMS model, which we are going to learn later, which talks about the goals, operators, methods, and the selection. This model predicts users' performance with a particular interface and can be used to filter particular design options. The other type of example of model would be a dialogue model, which can also be used to evaluate a dialogue sequence. The next method talks about the using previous studies in evaluation. So it basically considers the results from the literature used to support or disapprove the parts of the design. It is also based on it is a type of model based evaluation where care needed to ensure results are transferable to new design. Now let's see the next one, evaluating through the user participation. Now we say that as user is the main focus of the complete system, users' participation and evaluation tends to occur in the later stages. That means the user is not going to come in the design phase but at the later stages of the development, when there is at least a working prototype of the subsystem or the system in place. This may range from a simulation of the system's interactive capabilities without its underlying functionality. So we are saying that we are just giving a simulation of the system. I hope we all can remember the example of the cockpit, which will help the pilot to learn the basic functionalities of the system. So different approaches to evaluation through user participation include empirical or experimental methods, observational methods, query techniques, and methods that use psychological monitoring such as eye tracking and measures of heart rate and skin conductance. All these techniques can be learned in much depth later on. So there are two types of styles of evaluation, we would say. One involves majorly the laboratory studies and the next one talks about the field studies. Let's see both of them one by one. So in case of laboratory studies, we say that there would be laboratory of which will involve some usability techniques. This method basically has many advantages and many disadvantages. So the advantages are it requires specialist equipments are supposed to be available or those are provided. It provides us with an uninterrupted environment, so there won't be any type of interference. The disadvantages are it provides it lacks in content. It is difficult to observe several users cooperating at a time. It is appropriate if system location is dangerous or impractical for constrained single user system to allow control manipulation of use. In case of field studies, we basically say the advantages include natural environment, context retained, longitudinal studies possible, and it has a lot of disadvantages because there would be noise involved. As it is a field study, there would be many distractions also. So now let's see how to choose an evaluation method. So it depends when is the process supposed to be done for evaluation, at the time of design or implementation, what is the style of evaluation, laboratory or field, what is the objective of it, subjective or objective, the measures involved, the level of information, and what are the resources which are available, maybe time, subject, equipment or expertise, the level of information which is possible, the level of interference which is there. So considering all these different things, we need to find out and make sure which particular evaluation method is to be used for evaluating a particular system. Thank you.